and that's where Smeagol ended up going. We called him Smeagol. Well, so the deal with him, he came down.
Who's this guy?
This is the dead guy.
The dead guy, eventually.
Oh, sorry.
So
Eventually, he's not there yet.
You knew this guy before he died.
I did not, but Fred had seen him. He would go over and trade things, a beaver hide for a sleeping bag or various things like this. And one year, this guy that we called Smeagol, he called himself John the Baptist, but he and a buddy of his had floated down from Canada on a log raft. And there was a big cabin just like a mile upstream of the Kandik, and they had seen that and gone to spend the night there. And his buddy, during the night, shoved the raft off and left. And so he wakes up the next morning.
He ditched him.
He ditched him.
Ditched Smeagol.
And so he had the clothes on his back, a sleeping bag, and a shotgun, a 20 gauge. You know those Rossies with the external? Yeah. He had a 20 gauge shotgun.
So Fred's living there.
Yeah.
And okay, let's just stick with just calling him Smeagol. Fred's living there. Smeagol comes down. Smeagol's been abandoned by his buddy.
Yeah.
Now, who says they're going back? They got to go east.
Fred had his plan to go back east, so he had a bunch of food stored.
Oh, and he says you can't stay here at my house.
You can't stay at my house. You have to find a ride to Circle or
get out
take
of here.
raft.
I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be out of town, and when I'm out of town, I don't want you here eating my food.
That's right.
Got it.
And he pulls his canoe out, walks to his cabin, and it's about 20 below, and Smeagol has moved his lamp and his sleeping gear to this cabin up at 3 Mile Creek, 3 miles farther up. And Fred was pissed. And then he left a note on the door. I'm up at 3 Mile Cabin, John the Baptist, And so Fred goes up there, and this guy has been eating his jarred fish. He's been eating the moose that he had, and has sewn clothes out of furs that Fred had. He's loaded all of our ammunition. But anyway, Fred is pissed off at this guy. Fred used to grow pot on the roof of that cabin. He would throw dog shit up there, and then he would throw seeds. It wasn't any good.
Psychedelic weed. That's like mushrooms.
Yeah, it wasn't any good.
Weed?
What?
It wasn't good weed?
No.
Not for the area, good weed, or not good weed
Beggars
in general?
can't be choosers kind of weed.
It was.
It would give you a headache more than it would give you a high. But anyway, this guy had smoked all his pot, too.
Man, he was living high on the hog while you guys were gone.
And Fred got pissed about that, and he says it wasn't any good.
Of sticking around.
Anyway, Fred says, you got to go. Circle or Eagle. After it freezes up, you got to go, because I'm going to kill you otherwise, right? And so this guy says, I'm not going either. I'm going to Chalkitzik. So Chalkitzik is on the Black River, flowing down into the Porcupine. And it's a long ways north from the Kandik River. But that's what this guy says. And so
further into the bush.
Further. Yeah. And so Fred outfits him with some grain and some rice and some beans and
some stems.
gave him a .22 pistol.
Holy cats!
And this guy takes off with my snowshoes, right? and cruises up the Kandik River, because he's going to go up the Kandik and over into the Black River drainage, and so I came down late. He left late November, and I had
freaking dark too.
I was staying in this cabin above Johnson Gorge, so about 30 miles up the river, and so I would line a canoe up there and spend the winter. But there was a pass you could go over some mountains and down to the Yukon, and I preferred to do that than run the river, because the river would overflow, and then your trail would be gone and things, and you could get to a place that it was all water. Anyway, I got down there in early December, like 10 days after Smeagol had left Fred, and Fred says, well, he took your snowshoes, and I said, let's go and get him. And so we started walking up the river, but that was a really big snow year, and it was we went about 5 miles up, and I decided, yeah, heck, he can go wherever he wants. But I'm like, he's not going to make it to Chalkitzik, no way. And it actually became a topic among all of us living on the river. And
Where is Smeagol?
well, we all knew from being out there that you can't make a living with a 22 pistol in the winter. You might shoot a grouse or a squirrel or something like that here or there, but you can't feed yourself that way. And he didn't have enough food to start with. And so we were like, nah, he's got to be dead, you know. And so the next spring, we're coming down. And when we come to where this cabin is back in the woods, we come around this corner, I see my snowshoes hanging in a tree right there. We're a couple hundred yards up the river, you know. We came around and I say, Fred, Smeagol's here. And
Mystery
he's not
solved.
alive. And we get up there.
And you knew he wasn't alive.
Well, he couldn't have been alive. We didn't have any food there.
And the snowshoes were still there.
And the snowshoes
Yeah.
were there. He didn't walk away. And so we get up there. We got 5 dogs. Okay, I had 3, and Fred had 2 at that time.
All in the canoe with you.
No, they're running the base.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, they're just keeping up.
Yeah. And so we get there and walk up to the cabin, and the dogs are all running around, you know, and they are just really, they focus on dead things, right? They really like, you know, if you shoot a bear out of a tree or get a moose, you know, they want to be there. It's just like that's the thing of interest. So I open the door, and of course I knock on it just in case, but and there's this sleeping bag on the bunk. The bunk had been 9 feet long and 3 feet wide, and it was just these little black spruce back and forth, big ends back and forth, and then you know, on 2 poles that were notched into the walls, and so all of those poles, except about 3 feet of them, had been burned. He had a saw in the house, and so I picked him up, and he was light, and I brought him outside. He's
in his bag.
Yeah, he's in his bag, and so we took him
Or
out
in
of
Fred's bag.
Fred's bag, and it was he was so skinny, his eyes were sunken into his face. And we took his clothes off because we just wanted to see what had happened there. And he was seriously skin on bone. There was no meat. He had starved out. And the 22 was hanging on a nail in the back wall. And so he definitely didn't kill himself.
Yep.
And the dogs, they were like 20 feet away looking the other way.
Whoa.
They wanted nothing to do with this.
Wow.
You could see their ears are turned back to us, so they were paying attention, but they didn't want to be anywhere as near. It was almost like, you know, what we were thinking was one of the gods has fallen, you know, and because I don't know what they think of us, but I
Right.
think that may be.
Oh, that's what the dogs
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.